to thank everybody that helped this week. Mary and Fran for securing our front doors with a bicycle lock when the door lock on the sanctuary broke last week. We had it fixed since. The Enhancement Committee, Dee's leading it, doing a beautiful job with Steve and Norm and Joan Pete and Susan P.A. Tom Melzoni, our consultant, has changed companies. However, our relationship with him stays the same. Steve Camp for his nightly calls and everybody who's participating. That's going beautifully. Our bookstore volunteers, there's tons of books on sale, and Dorothy, one of our new members, has donated a bunch of great nutrition and health books. Hospitality team is working beautifully together. Thank you, God. And Rick Hall put in a commercial for his artichoke soup that he's selling next Sunday. So if you haven't seen it, go back and read that e-newsletter. And Stormy and Tana for taking such great care of our media. And Donna, who helped a number of ways this week. Yes, and so we're going to try to start live streaming our services, especially for the people who are away so they can stay connected, and also for our moments of truth. I really would like to see us put them out there on the web. So we'll be thinking that through and asking people who do that to sign release forms and all of that. And that shouldn't inhibit anybody. One of the Sky St. John, who was just passed this past year, but we had him in communications, and one of the things he always said is, whatever you do up there, if you get attention and you get people to remember your message, don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself for Christ, for the Christ teachings. So always remember that. Church financials are always posted on this bulletin board right here in the sanctuary. The church and the minister have met. We're working out terms of our contract, and I'm sure we're going to resolve what we are working on. And let's see here. Oh, so we usually update our chart here on the last Sunday of the month, but our treasurer and our CPA have said it'd be much easier to do it after we close the month. So we'll be doing it the first Sunday, I believe, in July, and then maybe the second Sunday in August with vacations. So we talked about having people dial in, or that's what we're going to be asking. If you want to attend that Discover the Power Within and you don't want to come to church and you want to stay at your home, use the nightly prayer dial in and listen in. We'll put a mic by the phone, and then we'll also make sure that those of us who are participating in the class use microphones, so we'll be able to do it that way. So we'll be posting that number. We'll send it out Monday or Tuesday, and so you can do that. Let's see here. So I have, I think I have some jokes here. Let's see here. It seems like it just skipped on me, which is not good. So, and I had to switch it around a little. The jokes you send me, I always have to switch around a little. And so, I don't remember whose it was. This woman called this older man, is poking fun at the elderly, which we all are today. So this woman called the man, and he was driving along the highway, and she said, "Honey, really be careful, because there's somebody that's driving the wrong way on the highway, and I really want you to be careful." And he said, "Oh, it's just not one person, it's a lot of them." And then another one that I really had to switch around was there was a senior citizen group who were having a conversation, and they found an article in the paper about super sex. And so one of the women said to this guy, "What do you think about super sex?" And he thought for a moment, and he said, "I'll take the soup." All right, so today is the final Sunday in June where we've been working with the power of imagination, the power to create. And so today the message is entitled Conflict, Chaos, and Creativity. Michael Beckwith says, whenever there's a will, there's conflict, and where there's willingness, there's always a way to work together. So what is this conflict anyway? Conflict is when two ideas clash or crash. Com means coming together, and conflict is from the Latin root flagre, meaning to strike. And when we think about those words, crash, collide, clash, they have some energy to them, don't they? Yeah. And so conflict, even though it's a part of life, and it's part of definitely our ever-changing world, It's amazing that many adults go out of their way to avoid conflict. As a matter of fact, it's quite amazing the inconvenience people will put themselves through to avoid conflict. And conflict gets a bad rap. And so I want to clarify two of those things about conflict that are untrue. One is conflict is negative. It is not. Nature uses conflict as a primary motivator for change. Before the hurricane, the ocean floor is like a desert, almost void of life. And then after the hurricane, the ocean floor flourishes with life. Nature uses conflict as a primary motivator for change. Beautiful beaches, canyons, mountains, caves are created out of this interference pattern of energies we call conflict. And conflict is natural. It's neither negative nor positive, it just is. And it's natural to experience conflict in relationships. Haven't we all experienced conflict? Let's see a show of hands. Okay, let's see everybody's hand go up. Yeah, okay. And it's chaotic. Ever been in a hurricane? And there's those two weather stars that are always out there with their raincoats and the beaches and the blowing hair. I mean, it's chaotic. It's chaotic. Right now, there's 10 active volcanoes on the planet. They could blow any time. When they blow, it's ash for hundreds of miles, and it's the way the Earth recreates more Earth. More Earth rises out of all that lava. So myth 2, conflict does not equal contest. Winning and losing are goals for games like golf and pickleball and soccer and softball, but not for conflicts. Conflict can be seen as a gift of energy which neither side loses or wins, but a new dance is created. So conflict is healthy and good, and instead of just repeating the old reruns, we rise to a different level and create something new. So resolving conflict is rarely about who is right. It's about acknowledging and deeply appreciating our differences. It's not just tolerating our differences, it's actually appreciating and enjoying them. So depending on how you experience conflict as a child, because that's where it all starts, isn't it? You may have fairly rigid beliefs about conflict. So for instance, when there was a conflict in your home, did your parents call a family meeting? Or when you had a conflict with a sibling, did your parents say, hey, work it out? Or when there was conflict in your home growing up, was there like dead silence where people walked on eggshells and quit speaking until somebody finally had to say, pass the salt? And then finally, after an interminable time, people talked, but the issue never got resolved. Now maybe you came from a home where there was shouting and raised voices, and it violated your peaceful state of mind. So since then, you've endeavored to never participate in any conflict. And perhaps in some of the homes that we grew up in, sometimes it was worse. Sometimes there was shouting, hollering, doors slamming, people fighting, and true relationship damage. Now that would certainly be a reason to be cautious about conflict. So fear often comes up a lot in people about conflict and confrontations. And we can learn a lot about ourselves when we look and observe ourselves in conflict. Do we avoid, diffuse, shut down, think it's better not to say anything? Remember Hitler. Or can we stand authentically in our truth? So, and how we handle conflict really affects the quality of our life. It's the degree of peace we have, and undoubtedly it affects our physical, emotional, and mental health. And so, we can't help that these past memories come up about conflicts. And there may have been times when we felt totally powerless. Maybe we felt like somebody lost their cool on us, or we lost our cool, or we felt like we could have handled something better, so we really want to avoid conflict or confrontation. But we can get stuck in that time when we obsess about the possibility of a future event occurring just because of past experiences. Now we're different, aren't we? We're different than even we were yesterday. So when we fear, we contract our energy and we close down. And when we fear, we then create significant boundaries between our internal thoughts and the external world around us. We react to the separation with an increased fear of discomfort and anxiety. Sometimes talking through our fears helps dissipate them. But seeing them clearly expands our possibilities instead of limiting ourselves. So we talked about forgiveness last week in the Quest, and people were very clear. There were quite a few teachers in that group, and they were really clear about repressed emotions wreaking havoc in the body. They cause anxiety, distress, imbalances, and disease. Because these are things, these feelings and these emotions, and they take up space in our minds and in our hearts and in our bodies. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity and Atom Smashing Power, says that the body is destroyed by discord, by fear, by inharmonious thoughts. And in Mysteries of John, Fillmore writes, many times much discord or conflict is avoided by this. He said, Christ's seemingly withdrawal from the outer until the quibbling intellect has somewhat spent its fury. That's a good line. Christ seemingly, that means our Christ self, seemingly withdrawing from the outer until the quibbling intellect has somewhat spent its fury. Because we can go round and round, can't we? Can't we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm glad you're with me. All right. So we may have solid reasons from past experiences not to invite conflict. Sometimes, that's a big challenge in first marriages when you get an introvert and an extrovert, because the extrovert can talk a mile a minute, and the introvert has to take time and process and kind of ruminate on it and think on it and sleep over it, and then they think of the good answer. So how did Jesus, our way shower, what did he teach us about conflict? Well, in John chapter 8, it's about the adulterous woman, and everybody was saying, well, let's just stone her. Okay? So he's hearing all the shouts from all the people from both sides. And what the scripture says, he's writing something in the sand. And so what can we learn about that? Well, first of all, Jesus does not run and hide from conflict. He doesn't shut down. He remains connected with the situation, and he hears both sides. He doesn't shout or lose his cool. He doesn't resist. He goes with the energy and he stays connected. Jesus does not try to control the outcome. He doesn't judge. He listens. He understands. And then he says something to the effect of, anybody who hasn't made an error, throw the first stone. So everybody stands around for a while, nobody throws a stone, everybody leaves. And then he pretty much says, don't make any errors to the woman, or don't sin. We call it error in unity. So again, the teaching is when we're in conflict, we spend some time apart, we spend time in our own wilderness, whatever that is, wherever it is, that brings us quiet, that removes the fury in our mind. So would it be possible to think of different types of conflict as though we were on a game board?
Yes.
Would it? All right, thank you. Can we reframe conflict knowing we're not the same people that we were yesterday? Could we believe that we could move through conflict with ease and grace and be actually personally gratified?
Yes.
So Gary Zukoff and Linda Francis write about this. They write about it in the Heart of the Soul book, where they talk about school as a playground, as many spiritual writers talk about that. And they say, that's what we're here in school. We're students, and we have a special tutor. We have a curriculum designed by the Holy Spirit, and that everything that shows up in our life, absolutely everything, is there for a purpose. So each morning when we wake up, we remind ourselves we're students in school. Maybe we ought to carry around sharpened pencils. And everything that happens that day is designed purposely, it's purposely put there to help us learn. So every night when we go over things, we remember we're in school, and then we say, well, what classes were we in today? Were we in the joy class, the patience class, the resentment class, the sorrow class? Our learning is not to change our spouses, our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors' dogs. It's to change ourselves, isn't it? And in class, we know we're pretty serious about studying and reading and writing so we get it, so we actually get the teaching and can integrate it into ourselves. So if we're going to pass this class, we have to look inside of ourselves. As Steve Camp so beautifully taught in the Art and Practice of Living Like No One or Nothing Is Against You. And we must assume that we're the cause of the emotions that torment us, and not the other things, but rather us. So we have to keep asking ourselves every night, well, what classes were we enrolled in today? And Zukov and Francis write that our most painful emotions show us where in the areas of our life we are most resistant to change. So it's always about looking inside. And this is a critical step in the process of spiritual development. It's called having a new thought. It's what the movement is all about. It's about having a new, different thought. So certainly Charleston and the African American Methodist Episcopal Church could not have provided a more exemplary model this week. And if anybody didn't catch President Obama's eulogy, do yourself and YouTube it. It's one of those things that he'll go down in history for. Those people did not choose to look outward, rather inward, and they chose to respond from the highest vibration of love. They didn't stay stuck in the horror of the event. They could have, couldn't they? It was tragic. They moved forward. It was just a stellar example of how to respond to a situation when you're coming from your Christ self. So when two or more ideas come together and strike together, they can also flow and blend. You know, the Bible tells us many times that we have to be like children to live in a heavenly state of consciousness. And when kids play together, you know, oftentimes they'll come with different ideas of how the play is going to work. But then you'll see, well, I don't want to do that. And they're like, yeah, okay, do this one. And then all of a sudden, what are they doing? They're combining, they're creating, they're collaborating, they're having fun. And can we do that? Can we use the power of our imagination? Thank you. Can we use the power of our imagination so our life is like a playground? And do you believe there's magic in conflict? And that magic would be calling on that supernatural, that divine mind, that Christ mind within us, and producing that supernatural effect. So our second unity principle says we are part of God. And so we ask ourselves all the time, how do we want to respond to this if we're a part of God and we're using our imagination to co-create? If we have this power of free will, the choice that we think about the confrontation, we can use our imaging power to have it come out the way we want to have it come out. What would it be like if we thought our whole life was just a playground? It would certainly be more fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's many steps you can take to do this, but I'm going to suggest 4 of them. And the first one is our willingness to grow, meaning we have the willingness that we want to really spiritually develop, we want to really grow emotionally here on this planet. We don't want to stay stuck in the same things. So in the last year and a half, we've had many people join our community, people who are new to unity and new to new thought. So if we're doing our job, teaching classes with, I have my 2 LUTs helping me teach, and delivering transformational messages that makes people think and contemplate and feel that we want to move to that higher ground, to be on holy ground, we might expect this process to be messy. So think of your community members as going through teenagerhood. Okay, everybody remembers what it's like raising teenagers, don't they? Okay. What happens in those teenage years? Well, they're learning to be responsible, they're trying to break away, but they still want the comforts of home. Their bodies are producing all these things, hair in places and different hormones are raging, and they're trying to respond, they're doing the best that they can. It's a time of major growth in all areas. And so we have to have the expectation as we all move to higher ground, that the process is messy if we're truly going to be our authentic selves moving through this. We might not all be at all the same time 100% happy-go-lucky all the time. Might we not?
Yeah.
You know, there you go. Anne Sullivan was Helen Keller's tutor, and she was able to look beyond Helen's pent-up anger. She knew Helen's anger could be the ultimate drive for learning excellence, if only there could be a small window of possibility. And then that moment came one day. And what Anne Sullivan did was she poured cold water in Helen Keller's hand And then on the other hand, she started spelling the word water. And it was right at that moment that there was a great learning opportunity. She was truly centered right then in her curriculum. And right at that moment, her life changed from being a prison to a playground. Oftentimes, the people who are on the path, on our path, they're there to help us work through things, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's no coincidence that sometimes our spouses mirror exactly the challenges we need to work through. Okay, so step one is that willingness to grow spiritually. Step two is to stay centered in our truth. And you know, that's easier said than done. Oftentimes we get off-centered because we think we should do things to please other people. And it sets up a continual inner struggle where we know we're the light of the world, yet we're continually adjusting the lampshade, our ego, so that it looks right to others. And so by centering ourselves and standing in our truth, even if nobody else agrees, we are being that radiant light in the world. And we're fully energized when we're standing in our truth, in our authentic power in ourselves. And what does our centeredness produce? Our centeredness produces emotional and physical stability. Our centeredness has a positive effect on relationships and the surrounding environment. Our centeredness has a great impact in developing trust and enables us to appreciate the nature of conflict. And when we settle for less, wherever it is, whatever area in life it is, we're not standing forthright in our truth. So step one is our willingness to grow spiritually. Step two is centered in our truth. Step three is we stay committed to stay connected. And this is perhaps the most challenging, wouldn't you say? People who have been in churches for a long time, wouldn't you say that's the hardest?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So when we stay connected, our energy continues to expand and affect the world around us. POW John Lambert was captive, and he said he treated his guards as his guests. He said in a small way, he established command of the situation. He said, I stayed connected, and it did wonders for my well-being. Connectedness is reality, and separation is the illusion. When we stay connected, our energy is that thread that connects everything to all things, and relationship is always about contraction and expansion. So we choose to expand our energy and strengthen our connection, or we contract our energy and increase the feeling of separateness. We have a choice every moment of staying with that energy that is flowing and a willingness to blend. So the first step is a willingness to grow spiritually. The second step is being centered in our truth. And the third is staying committed to staying connected. And the fourth is complete listening. Oftentimes when we completely listen, instead of jumping into problem solving, oftentimes that complete listening is the kind of change that changes our lens of perception. And that's easier said than done because there's all these sound bites, and it's almost entrained us to have a lower, limited level of listening time. So the four steps are willingness to grow spiritually, staying centered in our truth, committed to staying connected, and then deep listening. So if we do those things, I mean, maybe we can just try them for a week or two and see how that works for us in conflict. What it is going to do is going to allow us to have more directions, more possibilities, more angles, and more perceptions to look at things. And all those things lead to an expanding spiral of opportunities. And that's what we are, aren't we? We're energy, and we're expanding spirals of light in the universe. So if we're willing to grow, staying connected, being centered in our truth, and fully listening, we could be different in conflict than we've ever been before. Can we not?
Yes.
It's a strong yes, but can we not?
Yes.
All right, now I'm just kidding.